And I particularly don't like the word cryptocurrency. I hate the word cryptocurrency. I say crypto assets on my channel because I think the word currency, from talking to a lot of beginners, it confuses them. They're trying to say like, okay, how am I going to use Cardano or how am I going to use ADA as a currency? How am I going to use Ethereum as a currency? I mean, gas fees and stuff like that, obviously. What are your thoughts on, the word currency versus crypto assets?
So Don Tapscott wrote a book, I think it was Digital Asset Revolution or something like that, and he actually created a taxonomy, and he identified 9 different types of things a cryptocurrency could be as a digital asset. So, it's interesting asset when you have something that can wake up one day and be a commodity, wake up next day and be a currency, wake up the next day and be like a baseball card, and then be a security, and so it's a crazy world to live in if you want clear definitions of things, especially if you do regulation by buckets and you say, well, we regulate it one way if it's in this bucket, another way if it's that bucket, because it pops in different buckets all the time. So I like the term chimeric asset or financial stem cell or these types of things, and then people start thinking, okay, this is something that we use to represent either value or a relationship or an obligation or some form of representation of a thing. And when you start thinking it that way, you start realizing that basically it permeates to every part of society, whether it be video games or medicine or supply chains. And so it's really an extension of globalization in that sense. It's the value layer of the internet, and it's what allows us to start reasoning around how do we represent the events of the world, and how do we get those events to be understandable, contractual, and ultimately embed within them some rights that people can't violate in that respect. So I think that we're starting to realize that as an industry, and we're starting to see that because it's very clear the difference between an NFT versus a security token versus a DAO token versus Bitcoin versus ADA versus Ethereum. And I understand that some agencies just think they're all securities. Okay. Some people think the Earth, it was created 6,000 years ago. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but the vast majority of people, they tend to have a more nuanced view, and they tend to realize that how you use something, how you build something, is probably more meaningful to the conversation than a particular blind category, especially if you don't have rules for how to move things between buckets. The problem with the regime we have in the U.S. is if something becomes a security, it's not clear how it ever not becomes a security. You see, so it could become like Bitcoin tomorrow, but yet it'd still be regulated that way, and it would be bizarre. So this is an artifact of laws that were written by people that are dead today, that died in the 1950s. So not even recently. And obviously they need to be updated and modernized in order to accommodate the realities that we have today.
Yeah, well, but that would provide clarity, and the SEC couldn't sue everybody. So obviously, they don't want that. We're going to come back to the regulation for sure. I definitely want to get your thoughts on that. Thoughts on the Ripple case and all the drama on Twitter recently. But I wanted to continue talking about the ecosystem itself. Now, you said before that when you look at the development pool, the number of Ethereum developers obviously is like number one. It's got a huge amount of people, but obviously it had first mover advantage and things like that. Plutus is your play to be able to get more developers onto the Cardano network. And that's, of course, how you're going to build more dApps and more DEXs and things like that. So I just wanted you to talk about for a minute, like, the importance of the Plutus language, what makes it so viable for people to develop on.
It's kind of funny. People say, God, how do you compete with that Leviathan that is Ethereum and their first mover advantage? And I say, well, there's only about 80,000 Solidity developers who are mostly JavaScript developers, and there's 25 million developers across the entire world. So they're kind of a drop in the ocean compared to the totality of all people who write software. The reality is that smart contracts are not general purpose things. They're meant for specific domains, and anytime we have a specific domain, you're going to end up learning a new language for that. If you do database programming, you learn SQL. If you do web programming, you learn HTML and CSS. If you're a JavaScript developer, there are frameworks that you learn, like Angular, and you learn how to become a Dart developer, and you learn about Polymer, and I guess it's Flutter now is their framework that they have. And they change over time, and they have their own languages embedded within them. The point of functional programming is that it solves a lot of the problems that you, the developer, working with these systems are going to have to face in terms of concurrency and parallelism, off-chain actions, and security. And lo and behold, where's our biggest problem? Throughput and scalability and hacks. So it's as if maybe, just maybe, the languages that Ethereum's using and other people are using in the imperative space are not well suited for the problem domains that we're
Well, you can just roll back the transactions, right?
Oh, sure, but even if you have that mindset, almost always people are going to lose money and trust at the end of the rainbow. $35 billion in hacks and counting, more on the way. But there's this worship of developer accessibility, and there's this worship of first to market, fastest to market, not understanding that this infrastructure is being built for years. It's almost like a train company wakes up and says, you know, we're competing with all these other train companies, so we got to get our train out before anybody else. Sir, what about the braking software? We don't have time to think about that. We just got to get the train on the tracks. What happens when the train crashes and all the people die? Oh, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Or not cross that bridge.
Yeah,
Maybe how
yeah,
they die.
Exactly. You know, and so we said, look, let's get it right, get the right accounting model, plan for on-chain, off-chain, plan for verification, and then, you know, you can always add more languages later on. You can add TypeScript, you can add JavaScript, you can add side chains that have these capabilities. One of the members of the ecosystem did that. DC Spark created an Ethereum sidechain. And suddenly we have Milkamada. More than one people in our ecosystem built stuff on top of it. They built bridges on top. I know those bridges exist because I lost money when they got hacked.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ethereum. Nomad was great. Lost a lot of money on that. So people build these types of things, and that's the point of a good ecosystem, is it should maximize your freedom. But the people who work at core, they have to have social responsibility, realizing what they build, millions, if not billions of people will use, and if they fuck up, those people get hurt. At the very least, they lose money. Almost certainly, they lose trust, and in some cases, they actually die. You know, imagine being an engineer at Boeing and working on the 737 MAX, and it crashes, and you find out it's a software problem. How can you live with yourself? You spend the rest of your life knowing that because you didn't do your job, people died. And if you're talking about a privacy coin, you talk about all these things, it's devastating to people when these things get unraveled and damaged. But yet, if the only concern is first to market, fastest to market, all that money these people made evaporated in 2022. It's all gone now. A lot of these ecosystems are gone. I was asked in Cointelegraph in an interview, they said, how fast do you think you need to move? I said, would you like us to move at the speed of Luna? I mean, $40 billion just disappeared overnight.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure we'll hear all about, you know, Do Kwon's reasons for that in his latest interview with Lara Shen. She'll write a great book about him. You know, so you know, I don't even think about it. It's not even my world. We have a job to do, and we said, how do we make it safe? How do we plan for concurrency and parallelism? What are the great ideas of computer science in the world of distributed systems and programming languages that we can borrow from? Haskell came from a group of some of the smartest people in the world, 1985. They came together and they designed something. And there's 30 plus years of legacy and great ideas there that we now all get for free because we chose that approach. UTXO came from Satoshi. Native assets on Cardano came from color coins. Okay, there were so many great ideas over the last 13 years and in the distributed systems world, the last 40 years, that we are all recipients of. We didn't have to pay for, we just had the intellectual honesty to cite them and build on top of their shoulders. You can, of course, go replicate JavaScript if you want and live all the nightmares that ecosystem's lived for 20 years. Of course, you can go and try to build a giant Rube Goldberg virtual machine in the sky, as Ethereum has tried to do with the EVM. And again, you're going to run into tons of problems, and you're going to spend the next 10 years trying to undo all the mistakes that you did. And lo and behold...
Wait, haven't they already done that once?
Well, yeah, they've done it multiple times. And lo and behold, while they're trying to undo those mistakes, you know what happens? You slow down. Yeah. They spent 7 years trying to deliver proof of stake to the market, and at the end of the rainbow, what did they give? The Hotel California of the cryptocurrency industry. You can check in, but you can't check out. You can't unlock your Ether. It's custodial and it's illiquid. Meanwhile, we from 2020 on, people in this room are running the model. And yet they have the audacity to say we don't exist. They don't even know any of our economics research.
They keep moving the goalpost.
Of course. And you say, well, I thought you guys were the fast-moving ones. We spent 5 years, you spent 7 years. We did it right, you didn't. And now you're going to spend the next 5 years trying to clean up the mistakes of what you've just pushed out.
Yeah. Well, I think definitely when you look at Ethereum versus Cardano in the networks, I think you're definitely looking at, the idea of let's just throw everything to the wall and see what sticks, and then a slow, methodical roadmap, which, you got a lot of criticism for over the years, but I think people are now seeing like, oh, maybe that's the better way. Maybe you should plan. Maybe you should plan. So, Ethereum versus Cardano, definitely an interesting conversation. I think when we're looking at the roadmap for E2.0 being completely rolled out, we're quite a ways away from that happening. Now they're going to be working on sharding and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see how their tumbles and their slow moving, will create some gaps maybe for Cardano to come in and, eat up some of the market share.